There's been no family in American politics that has received more attention or inspired more Americans than the Kennedy family. Patrick Kennedy is the son of the late liberal icon of the U.S. Senate, Ted Kennedy. Himself a former congressman, Patrick Kennedy is now an advocate on behalf of mental health issues. Congressman Patrick Kennedy, good to see you.
Thank you.
Let me, President Obama is in this state a lot, talking jobs, jobs, jobs. Mitt Romney is in this state a lot, talking jobs, jobs, jobs. Mental health issues, serious for Ohioans and Americans, and yet not on the radar. How in an election year can we position to get mental health concerns into the discussion?
Well, the essence of an economy is our human capital. It's our people. It's our productivity rates. And every single family in America has someone with a mental illness, whether it's alcoholism, depression, a child with autism, a parent with Alzheimer's, all of whom require care. And if they don't get that care, then the rest of the family is affected. So our economy is really very much in sync with how healthy our people are. If our people are healthy, then they can be more productive. But if they're distracted because their loved ones aren't being cared for properly, you can bet that's going to be a drag on businesses and on the country as a whole. So I think this is something that is of interest to us, not only because it's the right thing to do and it's the human thing to do, but it's also good for our economy. And frankly, the work that we can do to provide good research to help us solve these issues of the mind is going to lead our economy back, because our economy of the future is not just manufacturing, but it's manufacturing of biologics, it's manufacturing of medicines, it's manufacturing of the kind of science that's going to lead the rest of the world in giving us the predominant place in the world as a place of scientific discovery.
Does it sometimes frustrate you that the conversation, I mean, you read the headlines every day, you watch the national news programs, and I think of all the teachers that I've talked with in the last 3.5 years. I mean, the country just has no money. I mean, that has been, I mean, we were on the economic cliff, and we've been slowly recovering. And I know educators have been kind of upset because education has not even been part of the dialogue. Does it sometimes get frustrating for you that the issues that you champion, it's just difficult to get them registered?
Well, you know, our special forces, our Green Berets, emphasize mental health, not as something to take care of weak people, because of course the Green Berets are the strongest you can imagine, but to make them even stronger. So the difference in whether the United States is going to be competitive in the world is how effective we're going to be in maximizing our individual potential to be productive and to live healthy and quality lives. That is directly proportional to how good we are at treating the whole person. And what I mean by that is their emotional, spiritual, and mental health. That is the future, not only for a people that care about how we treat our loved ones, but how we want to live our own lives.
And your hallmark bill, basically, it mandated that insurance companies handle all this, right, including addictions.
Right, but you can't divorce mental health from overall health. So if you have diabetes, you have cardiovascular disease, you have had a heart attack, all of these things are affected by depression, are affected by addiction, affected by mental illness. So you can't just treat one part of the body. You know, cancer. My sister had cancer. She got depressed because she nearly lost her life, ultimately just passed away. But her survival was because she had a decent attitude. She had mental health counseling. That helped her become more resilient. So we all need to be treated, not just from the neck down, but the whole body. And I advocate for a checkup from the neck up, because just as much as you get your blood pressure checked, you want to get your mental health checked, because your mental health is going to determine your overall health.
You kind of explained to me, I love this concept of kind of the mental umbrella, that everything should be on the table, so to speak, so that you're not just dealing with Parkinson's disease over here and an addiction problem over here, that all of this somehow interlinks under one mental umbrella.
Well, you know, you just asked about education and teachers. Well, teachers are going to be held to be accountable for their classroom and how well their kids learn. But if we don't have adequate screening and diagnostics of the children in the classroom, those teachers are going to be penalized for not allowing those children to achieve their level of potential. But if those children have a learning disability, and that means not just dyslexia, but emotional deregulation, depression, bipolar, if they have those issues, they're not going to learn as well. We're not going to be as productive as a nation, and our teachers are not going to be reimbursed for allowing those kids to develop in school.
I know we've had a lot of concerns about returning veterans in all of this, too. Is the country doing a good enough job making sure that they're okay when they come back?
Well, I think, frankly, the moment for us in mental health is now looking after the newest community in the mental health world, and those are our returning veterans, because they're suffering from post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. And frankly, they're medical POWs. They're literally prisoners of their war injuries. They're home in body, but many of them not in mind, because they're suffering the trauma that they experienced, and they're suffering the injury in their brains because they had repeated concussions due to traumatic brain injury. We as a nation owe it to our veterans, first and foremost amongst all of our community. And if we get it right for the veterans, and we sure have a long ways to go to get it right for our veterans, but if we get it right for our veterans, we're going to get it right for all Americans, because our veterans need the community health centers, the hospitals. They don't just need the VA centers to do a good job. They need all of health care to be doing a good job. And that means the Mental Health Parity Act, which I had the honor of sponsoring, needs to be implemented, because a majority of veterans are not going to get their care through the VA. They're going to get their care through their employer-based health care, which means if their employer-based health care denies them care for traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress because mental illnesses are discriminated against, well, then what American wants our veterans to be discriminated against? So I really think that we need to implement mental health parity, not just because our sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers need this care, but most particularly because our veterans do. And when our veterans get it, we're all going to be winners.
Putting partisanship aside, I want to get into politics, pick your brain here for just a second on that topic, but what overall grade would you give the Obama administration? Have they been concentrating on these issues enough?
Well, I think the Obama administration took on the biggest challenge of all, and that is whether we as a nation are going to end this sick care system. Because all we have now is we're paying for everybody, right? But we're paying for them in the most costly way possible through the emergency rooms. We need to get people well and keep them healthy so they don't cost us as much money. That means we need a health care system, and we're not going to get that if the incentive for insurance companies is to keep people out until they get really sick. Because frankly, that undermines the bottom line. Even though in the short run they make profits by denying care, in the long run we will all benefit, and including the economy, most importantly the economy. And that's why this president did the right thing by forcing the issue on health care, making sure everybody should be able to get it. And by the way, the notion the Supreme Court would deny that health care is part of interstate commerce is just unbelievable.
Could happen.
It could happen. But the good news for mental health parity is we were passed by and signed into law by President Bush in 2008. So that still will stand either way.
Let me ask you kind of where your dad was at on the individual mandate. I mean, your dad dominated the American healthcare debate for so many decades. And we find ourselves in this whole argument. We talked right before the break about the healthcare decision on this new healthcare law. Republicans used to support it, the idea of this mandate of each individual paying in, whether it was the Heritage Foundation or Mitt Romney or Newt Gingrich. President Obama was opposed, and we've seen both parties kind of do a flip-flop here. Where was your dad on that concept of individual mandate?
Well, first, my dad believed health care was a moral right, because to deny someone life-saving health care is to deny their humanity. So that's why he had lots of folks on the opposite side of the aisle from the evangelical and Christian coalitions support it, because they believe that all people need to be treated with human dignity. And how dignified is it to allow an insurance company to deny life-saving care because of no fault of your own? You have a pre-existing condition. Well, the Obama health care plan makes sure that you aren't going to be denied insurance because you need insurance. How revolutionary is that?
And we're paying for it anyway, right? Because if people go into the emergency room, and we don't deny care in the emergency room, So, I mean, the taxpayer is for it anyway.
Anyway, so it's interesting because a lot of Republicans, the economics are, we're going to pay one way or the other. Do you pay in a way that is more effective and cost effective, or do you pay through critical sick care? We cannot our care out of this. We have to make sure people get taken care of. By doing so effectively and efficiently, we reduce the cost for everybody. And we take care, most importantly, of our family members. Because keep in mind, there but for the grace of God go I. It could be you tomorrow that needs that health care and is sitting getting denied by your insurance company because you have a pre-existing condition.
Mitt Romney ran against your dad in 1994. That Mitt Romney was in favor of gays in the Boy Scouts. He was pro-life, pro-choice, adamantly pro-choice in abortion. He disavowed the Reagan economic policy of the 1980s. He opposed the contract with America in that Senate race against your dad. What were his impressions of Mitt Romney watching his career in Massachusetts? And I mean, from your perspective, is the real Mitt Romney the moderate Massachusetts candidate that we saw, or is he the new conservative Mitt Romney?
Well, now with almost everyone out of the race besides Ron Paul, it's really a two-man race, Mitt Romney against himself, because he's got two different records. And we don't know which is the real Mitt Romney.
What's your gut intuition? I mean, going through those campaigns,
I think the American public wants some integrity with the candidates that they choose, especially for the highest office in the land. In other words, with my dad, many people didn't like my dad's positions, but they respected my dad because they knew that what he said, he believed in. And I think that's what they want in a leader. They don't want someone that they're going to agree with all the time, but they want someone who everybody will respect because they know that they stand for what they believe in, and they speak and act on what they believe in. And with Mitt Romney, it's hard to tell. So I think, frankly, that these elections are important because people need to exercise their rights, and those rights also have responsibilities and people to vote. So whether they agree or disagree with the president, they need to get out and vote. They need to get out and vote for our country's sake. Our veterans sacrificed too much to give us this great country and the rights that we have. You look at Egypt today, you look at Syria today, you look at and places all around the world. How lucky are we to be Americans? We are united by much more than what divides us. And that has been emphasized throughout American history, that Democrats and Republicans, we're all Americans. And we have a stake in making sure our democracy works. So I hope people get out to vote either way.
Two names as we run a little bit tight on time here, but I want to ask you about Rob Portman. A lot of rumors that he will be Romney's vice president. You worked with him.
Yes. Rob Portman has a fantastic integrity and respect amongst my colleagues. He's an example of somebody that has a position that I may not always agree with, but I respect. And there are people that my dad worked with for years on both sides of the aisle. We got things done because people had integrity, they had their positions, but they put the nation's interests before their partisan interests. And that is what we need in our political system today.
Do you think that would be a good pick, though?
Oh, I think it'd be a great pick for our country, and I think he has a great deal of respect amongst Democrats and Republicans alike.
You want to say ditto for John Kasich, who you also work with?
Yeah, John, I like John a lot. Obviously, we have different political views, but I like the fact that he's willing to listen. And again, I think we need to celebrate more of what we have in common than what divides us. And unfortunately, in politics today, politics has become too divisive, and the middle gets missed, and the national interest gets missed.
One of your most famous moments is when you took to the floor to angrily talk about our Afghanistan policy.
If anybody wants to know where cynicism is that there's two press people in this gallery. We're talking about Eric Massa 24/7 on the TV. We're talking about war and peace, $3 billion, 1,000 lives, and no press.
We're still there. Would you make that same speech today?
I think what I've always bemoaned is that we think the war is over when our soldiers come home. The war for our soldiers continues. They're struggling with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress, and we cannot allow that to continue. We need to go at it with urgency. If they were held captive by the Taliban or Al-Qaeda, how long do you think it would take for us to go in and set them free? But they are prisoners of their war injuries today, and we need to go set them free. And the way we do that is provide good mental health care, provide good neuroscience research to help find the cures and discoveries that are going to set them free from their war injuries.
Kind of, there was talk about quid pro quo that came up regarding the president. Explain that further, because I read several different variations of the point you were trying to make on that, but we are in a campaign year here.
Right. So the president supports medical research. Medical research isn't so popular today because people are looking at the bottom line. I support medical research because I know it's the end game that's going to set us free from these disabilities. The president supports that. I support that. So therefore, I support the president. I like the president anyway. He and my dad worked together on a lot. He delivered on a lot of things. But I see it as my responsibility not just to vote, but to contribute, because I have the ability to contribute, and I want to make sure that this president's going to be up against a lot of money on the other side. So when the president's doing things that I support, I'm going to make sure I support the president.
I lost my dad last October, and I think of him.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I think of him every day, and I know how close you were to your dad. And he was such an icon in American politics. Do you get over it? I mean, is it just one of those things where you just kind of, he's still guiding you in some way? I mean, he had to be this, we viewed him as the American public as this larger-than-life icon of American politics. To you, it's Dad. I mean, does he still linger there for you?
Well, I had the great fortune not only of calling him my dad, but calling him my colleague in Congress. And he was the primary sponsor of the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act after Paul Wellstone passed away. And my dad was my hero, and I know that he'll always be in my heart. I just had a child myself.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And my child will never know his grandfather, but I'm working on the Edward M. Kennedy Institute on the Senate, which is going to keep my dad's work and memory alive, and someday my son will be able to go visit that institute and learn more about what an amazing grandfather he had.
When you left the House, first time in 58 years that a Kennedy's not in Washington, does that dynasty come back? Does Camelot come back in a younger generation?
Well, I will tell you that my nephew, Joseph B. Kennedy Jr., the fourth, is going to be running for Congress in Massachusetts, and he is top of his class at Stanford University, top of his class at Harvard Law, went to the Peace Corps, speaks fluent Spanish, and is an assistant district attorney taking on criminals in Massachusetts and putting them away. And he's running for Congress, and you haven't seen the end of the Kennedy family, I assure you. He's going to be a winner.
Congressman Patrick Kennedy, good to see you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And we'll be right back.